We are excited to welcome on our next guest. We have Sean McGillicuddy over from Thai Software. Sean, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for. We're excited to chat with you because I always have the pleasure of being able to watch some of your interviews, but I think just the way the days work out, I never actually get to chat with you in person. So glad to be here with you.
Yeah, you as well.
Yeah, hey, welcome to the show, John. It's good to see you. I do get the pleasure of talking to him every once in a while. It's always insightful. It is great stuff. But today we're going to talk about predictability models, right? Data and predictability models with rates, et cetera. Let's just jump into it a little bit, Sean. What we got going on here? What are predictability models with rates now? Is it someone going, feels like this, and last year it did that, therefore this price?
Right. So you definitely have a lot of that to cover when it's looking at last year, looking at the years prior. But obviously, we're in a market that we haven't seen before, as far as just COVID and whatnot. And you were covering sort of the increase in pricing over the last couple months, and which is typical, which is normal around this time of year. But we're not totally sure exactly where that's going to taper off. And I mean, it does look like it is tapering off, and you'll see a decline. But with things still being backed up, how do brokers and 3PLs make sure that they are empowering their carrier reps with something for negotiation, right? So what we're seeing is a major success in combining different rating tools for full truckload. So I mean, obviously DAT and Truckstop have their rate predictability models, Rate Mate and Rate View. But we're seeing a lot of brokers have success with combining the two of those, and then also adding things like the sonar signals, and maybe even there's some cool companies that are doing some stuff that are within a 5% margin of being able to predict exactly what the rate should be right now on the spot, like green screens. And so what we're seeing for brokers in having some success, and especially looking forward with just still being a little unpredictable, is use them all if you can, right? So I know not every 3PL is looking to put the investment in that, but only looking at one data source to try and predict pricing, or only putting the burden onto your carrier reps to predict and be able to negotiate in this market without having the right tools to look at and to know exactly where they should be, it's a little unfair to the carrier rep. So adding as many of these tools as you can. We're seeing a lot of brokers just sign up for everyone that they can, adding them into their TMS suite and empowering their carrier reps to negotiate.
Is that really the best move to make, Sean, is doing that? You sounded a little hesitant. How should they actually be using this? Because that sounds like the easy sauce is to just throw as much as they possibly can and give it to the rep, right? I mean, sometimes that rep is going to be talking to a carrier if they're buying the capacity, right? Or sometimes they're talking to a shipper if they're selling that capacity. And they have to convince them that they know the rate and why it is what it is, right? So it's a little more than just throwing a bunch of data together saying, hey, here's 7, pick the median and sell them that rate, right?
Yeah. No, and exactly. And that's really where I say you have these carrier reps that have, you pay them for their knowledge of the market and, over the years, their industry knowledge. And so you definitely need that human being in there, to make the negotiation and think through the process. But if they're looking to cover a particular lane and they, knowing that the market's a little up and down, if they're able to look at every type of data point right in front of them from one screen, then it allows them while they're on the phone to look at everything, and they have the right information to say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Would you consider doing it for this price? Or just knowing that they're getting on par with what the market is bearing, or knowing that they're able to they're not overpricing or underpricing the freight for the shipper.
John, I think that's a great point, though, really kind of trying to take in as much information as possible. I know from my standpoint as an economist, it's always great if I can look for more than one confirming signal for sure. But I think this is great insight that you have to offer here. Can you talk about the predictability models, specifically around spot rates? Because I can imagine that can be a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, and it definitely is. And I think that's where this comes in to play, most importantly, because you have certain models are obviously going off of both what it was last year and then what we saw last week, right? And so that's one way to potentially predict. But there's a lot of really cool tools out there nowadays that are actually predicting, bringing in what's the weather like in that area, and then obviously you have, things like sonar signals telling you who's in favor on that lane. Is it the carrier or the shipper? And so, the ability to look at that quickly on the spot, for your spot quote market, and have something that is truly tangible, and you can trust that it's pulling in, not just because what it was last week doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be in the same range this week. It is a good thing to look at, and you want to know obviously those data points, but you need something a little bit more real time. And so for the brokers who can, afford to invest in that, I think it's going to speed up their process of finding coverage, because they're going to know exactly what they should be paying based on, just more than one data source.
So, Sean, it sounds like I need to do some investment in a lot of hardware and servers and my entire tech stack, right? Talk to me about that. What do I need to do if I'm a broker and I'm listening to this right now? I'm like, man, I got to get some of these models going and get this going. I need to be on check because things are tight, right?
Yeah.
What do I need to do, my friend?
Yeah, I think where we need to be, as far as the market's concerned now, is I think you need to look at your TMS as more of like a core operating system that you can add apps to, right? So on your phone you can add all these apps, but you have your phone has its own core operating system, and then so you add in these apps and you can use them. And I think that's the best way to look at your TMS, is to look at your TMS like, hey, this is a great workflow for me. This really works for my team. But then I need to plug in things like, like RateMate and RateView, green screens, sonar, right? Plug all that into my TMS. And so if your TMS is not necessarily able to handle, plugging in different apps and handling those integrations, then I think it's going to be tough for 3PLs moving forward. I really think that's going to be the future, is the TMS's core operating system. And these are all apps that you plug in so you can view them all in one place and use them right from your normal workflow.
Sean, I think this is a great information first off, but the other part that kind of comes to my mind is when we're thinking about the user interface, because I can only imagine, and maybe you can talk to some of this as well, because there are times where maybe I'm using a certain software or using a certain process and it's not the most user friendly, but it's accurate. But at the end of it, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to go through all these hoops and really trying to really get an answer. So can you talk to some of the importance of really kind of integration or really being able to hone in that user experience?
Yeah, I mean that's a very important question, because obviously if the rate predictability models that we're talking about live way over here and they're complicated to get to, then your carrier reps aren't going to be able to use them on the fly. And that's the point. That's really the point that I'm talking about, is being able to put those in one place, look at them on the spot, because that's what you're doing. You're spot quoting, and so the ability to see all of those on one screen, I would suggest 3PLs talk to their TMS provider and make sure that they can accommodate what this really needs to look like in order to empower the carrier rep, right? So if it's in 100 different places, you're going to have a tough time using it. You're going to just go off of legacy knowledge, which legacy knowledge is extremely important, but you need to add in just easy ways to see this. And so one of the things we do in our TMS is you see all those things on one screen, right? So you see your entire carrier network, you see those pricing predictability models all stacked together, and then you see your load boards off to the side. So all on the same screen, the ability to just put all that in one place. And so, if your TMS provider, I would suggest talking to, your CTO and your TMS provider and making sure that you are able to plug these things in like applications. And they should just plug in and work within the workflow that you've already selected for your company.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. So, sorry, Sean. So we have about a little less than a minute left. So right now, everybody knows what's going on. Supposedly, talk to the person who's like, hey, things are tight, rates are really high, I'm making a ton of money right now. They're not looking at this type of stuff. They understand the markets, right? Talk to that. Tight or loose markets, is this important?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is going to be important for the future of the industry in general. I mean, we're seeing a heavy importance on it right now with the way the market is, but I think it's going to end up becoming the future. And the last time I was on, I was talking about the digital broker model and being able to, as a traditional broker, take that model and use it while maintaining relationships, not disintermediating the broker. And so I think the ability to put these in one place will really add to that ability to compete with a digital broker or a really large broker. So it's important.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much, Sean. Where do people find out more about it?
Yeah, if you want to check out our website, it's tie-software.com. And thank you guys for having me on, and happy Thanksgiving.